Our great friend Chad Brendel, BearcatJournal.com. We've had him on many times, especially when it started to get into all of what was happening with the Big 12 in the future, with Cincinnati joining, in fact, next summer. He joins us on 365 Sports, and this time in a different way. Luke Fickell now, Wisconsin, Cincinnati's on the clock. And Chad, what's been the reaction among Bearcat Nation?
A lot of panic initially because this one was a surprise. It kind of came out of nowhere. The Wisconsin people all thought it was going to be Jim Leonhard, and it was something that you check on because it's a pretty big job. And I think even they were surprised. So that's why you didn't hear any rumblings or rumors to the like. And then all of a sudden you get the Pete Thamel tweet yesterday at about 11 a.m. and if Pete Thamel tweets it, like it's happening.
Yep.
That's how that goes. So I think everybody is going through the stages of grief, and acceptance has kind of settled in, and now it's time to get on to the business of finding who's next.
Chad, what do you think? I mean, again, this is a Big 12 job now that they're hiring for, so that changes the pool probably considerably than it would have been previously. But what kind of coach do you think they are hiring? Do you want another Luke Fickell, somebody to keep that stream going, or what do you do?
Another Luke. I mean, I don't know what another Luke Fickell looks like. I guess an assistant from Ohio State, or is it somebody with Ohio ties? Is it a defense first guy? Do they look to maybe go more offense? It's interesting because there's a lot of different ways that you can define it. Is it a culture guy? Because that's ultimately like what it comes down to as what Luke Fickell was. This is going to be really interesting from John Cunningham because he's had one basketball hire. And he hired a coach with 10 years of experience that is moving up a level. But the runner-up was an assistant at Ohio State. So how much does he weigh experience, or how much does he look at an up-and-coming guy? I don't know. It can go a lot of different ways right now. And it's going to be interesting to see, like, as we get into the heart of this thing over the next 2 or 3 days, what names start to pop up.
Chad, when did this first get on your radar, and what was your initial reaction?
I mean, realistically, like I said, like all the Wisconsin people were of, anybody covering Wisconsin was of the full belief that Jim Leonhard was going to be their next head coach. So usually that's where the smoke starts coming from is the place that he's going to. So when you call and you check those sources and they say, we're pretty sure it's going to be Jim Leonhard, you don't get a lot of smoke that Luke Fickell's name was involved. So I commend them for, Luke and Nebraska or Wisconsin for doing a really good job of keeping this thing quiet, because really when the Thamel tweet came out, well, okay, but this is what we've been hearing all along. So this is a departure from that. So it takes you by surprise, kind of.
Had Cincinnati been in the championship game, had they won, would this not have happened this week, or is this going to happen no matter what?
I think it was going to happen no matter what. I mean, from what we're hearing now, Amy Fickell his wife went to Wisconsin to kind of scope out the city. Luke Fickell interviewed after the ECU game, like they played ECU on a Friday. He had his interview with Wisconsin on a Saturday. That doesn't point to something that, was exploratory, I guess is a good way to put it. That points to something that this is pretty far down the path. And so I don't know. We saw with Willie Fritz that Tulane gets into the American Athletic Conference championship game, and 2 days later he takes the Georgia Tech job. So I think it is. I think this was going to happen one way or another, whether they got into the championship game or not.
Chad, how much does the timing hurt, more so given the fact of where they're heading next year? Or does it make that much of a difference that they're now heading into the Big 12, the timing of this happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think it reduces when you're looking at it, do you really want, like, one of the names that has really popped up has been Brian Hartline.
Yep.
He's the lead recruiter at Ohio State. He was the 2022 recruiter of the year on 24/7 Sports. But he just started coaching in 2018. He's only been a wide receiver coach, and this year he is the passing game coordinator. And so he hasn't been a coordinator. He's only been a coach for 4 years. That's a chance that you can much easier take in the American, right?
Right.
Because you're tying yourself to this coach for your first 3 or 4 years in the Big 12. And maybe it works, and maybe it's a grand slam, and everything goes swimmingly. But it is also, if you're looking at like a poker hand, the other guy's got aces, and you're trying to win with 7-9 offsuit, right? Your hands are tied there. That the margin for error is so wide that's part of what I think when I said, like, this is going to be really interesting to see where John Cunningham goes with this. Does he go with experience? Does he go with a hot coordinator? Does he go completely beyond that with a guy like Hartline that doesn't have coordinator experience? The ways that this can go are numerous, and we've got a new AD hiring his first football coach, so we don't have a lot of history to go off of.
Chad, how quickly do you think this will happen, given the timetable now? When you lose a coach like this, even gets more accelerated. It's not like you fired him and had time to think about this.
So the one data point that we do have is the basketball search that John Cunningham ran after John Branham was let go and the hire of Les Miller. John Branham was fired on April 9th. The press conference to announce Les Miller was on April 14th. So he has moved exceptionally fast in his one other hire. So I would expect, the transfer portal opens Monday, right? So I would think Friday, Saturday, Sunday, sometime this weekend, at worst, maybe a press conference a week from today on Monday. Like, you would think, because of trying to keep your roster intact, being ready for when the portal opens, so that, the way that this thing I think is going to happen, and I would guess you guys agree with me, most of these higher name guys going into the portal know where they're going when they get into the portal. So if you don't have a staff in place until, say, hypothetically, like December 7th or 8th or 9th, you're getting into the portal at a time when it's already been pretty picked over. And that, I've heard a lot of schools are going to be doing official visit weekends for the portal, the 8th, 9th, 10th, like that weekend. So if you don't have your staff in place until then, schools are already going to have hundreds of guys from the portal on their campuses. And that puts you behind the 8 ball. So I think it's going to have to be fast. I would guess that by Sunday, 6 days from now, I would guess we'll have an idea of who the coach is going to be.
Chad, I mean, obviously now everything's kind of, I feel like, up in the air just due to change, but also the transfer portal and, the accessibility there and all that. But what's kind of your final read on Cincinnati? I know still a bowl game to play, but what's kind of your final read on this year's team? And even though the Fickell deal throws everything in upheaval, your sort of look at the future of sort of their base.
I think it was a reset. Like, it was kind of somewhere between reload and rebuild, right?
Okay. Yeah.
There were a lot of young guys that you had to get playing time just from the fact of you lost 9 guys to the NFL draft. Like, that's a lot of production and a lot of experience. So you had to cover yourself there. And then what people, I think, don't really pay attention to that they should have is that Cincinnati lost half of their coaching staff. They had to replace 5 assistants this offseason. So not only have you lost half of your on-field talent that got you to the CFP, you've also lost half of your staff. And then the year before that, they lost Marcus Freeman, and we see where he's at now. So I think there was just a lot of, new faces, new places. They still, this thing could have gone horribly wrong with what they were replacing. They still went 9-3 and played on the final day of the season to host the AAC title game. So I think it was a success, and I think you got a lot of guys that are going to be the core of your program on the field. But it looked a lot like 2018 when they won 10. The first year Fickell had success, where they won double-digit games, but they got blown out at Ohio State, and they weren't good enough. They got blown out at UCF. So they just weren't quite there yet. This team had a feeling of, we're pretty good, and we're going to get a lot of wins, but we're not a championship level team yet. And that's okay. You're not going to be a championship level team every year. But they were close. I mean, 3 losses, Arkansas, UCF, Tulane, all ranked at the time. They lost by a grand total of 14 points. So I think you feel pretty good if the new coach can keep things mostly, intact as they are.
Isn't it just, you think about it in this day and age of the topsy-turvy, changing winds of college football. In a matter of a year, Cincinnati went from one of the highest highs of making the college football playoff, and what an incredible run, to a year later their coach is gone. And then next year they're going to be in the Big 12. It's just, things are going at such a rapid speed.
Yeah.
And I know it had to have been just a gut punch to Cincinnati, because of what I read some columns from Wisconsin writers, that this came not out of nowhere, but this was not on the radar, as even you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, the people that cover Wisconsin had no idea. They were scrambling. My phone was blowing up going, hey, what's Luke Fickell? And I'm like, you tell me, you cover Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a tough blow. But look, I will tell you guys this. Cincinnati's been through a lot of this before. They lost Mark D'Antonio and hired Brian Kelly. They lost Brian Kelly, hired Butch Jones. They lost Butch Jones and hired a terrible senator from Alabama. But then they got Luke Fickell. Their batting average is pretty good. I'll take 4 for 5.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of success. That success has led to a lot of turnover, and that turnover has led to still a lot of good coaches coaching in Cincinnati. You're doing pretty good when your coaches have left for Michigan State, Notre Dame, Tennessee, and now Wisconsin.
And the U.S. Senate.
And the U.S. Senate, but he didn't leave on his own. But I just think it speaks highly of this university, this program's ability to bounce back, to take a hit, and to keep on moving. They very easily could have been USF. USF, when the Big East fell apart, that was a program that at one time was number 2 in the nation, and now their program is dying on the vine. So Cincinnati will be resilient. It might take a little bit longer now than expected to get up into speed in the Big 12, but if they get the hire right, they'll get there.
How's your wife? How's Kelly?
Doing great. She's getting ready for a second stem cell transplant here at the end of the month, so that's going to be a challenge. But spirits are up, and she's looking great, and we're doing really well, all things considered. We're fighting as always.
Well, we're thinking about you guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time, Chad. Great stuff.
Appreciate you, gentlemen. We'll talk soon.
Chad Brendel covers Cincinnati Bearcat Journal. Think about the turnaround.